I want to go to my last guest of the day, but not least by any means, the man I want to talk to, and I've been chomping at the bit to talk to all day, Arnaud Develay. He is an author, political analyst, an international lawyer specializing in international criminal law. His latest book, Foreign Entanglements, Biden, Ukraine, and the Fracturing of American Political Consensus. Arnaud, how's it going, man? You doing okay today?
Hello, Jamal. I'm doing fine, thank you.
I need to. There are two things I want to talk about. One has to do with Russia's path to peace memo, which is effectively what they've been saying the entire 3 years, right? Plus the extra territories. But the other one is I want to get your take on those strikes by Ukraine. And I guess the memo is least complicated. So let's go into the memo first and then let's bounce into the other one. So Russia effectively just gave Ukraine, if Ukraine thought this was going to disrupt the peace process, meaning that attack, it did not, nor should it have. Russia, of course, went there and still, this is our document. This is what we need for peace. And it was pretty straightforward. It was basically the most rational thing in the world in the context of what they've been saying that they've wanted the entire way through, and for that matter, the reason that the war took place in general. And just to give a primer on this, and I want to get your take. It says two Donbass republics as well as Kherson, Zaporozhye region are officially joined Russia after the referendums. Crimea also voted to join. Those are part of Russia. Those need to be acknowledged as such. Ukraine will have to withdraw all of its forces and armed groups from those territories. Kiev would have to reaffirm its neutral status, introduce a ban on any military activities by third parties. Effectively, you can't have NATO troops in Ukraine, just as a rule. They need to vocally, and I would imagine put it into law that they're a neutral state. So there's that. They need to reaffirm their nuclear-free status, prohibited acquisition, transfer, or deployment of nuclear weapons. This is probably a direct result of some of the things that they were saying early on before this started, and that insane, deranged British guy. The memo expects Ukraine to set up certain limits on the size of its armed forces as well as military equipment. Does not provide what that number is. Let's see, is one more. Oh, they would have to guarantee the right of Russian speakers as official language. And one last thing, denazification. There's, of course, that, and elections. Give me your take on this. To me, this is rational. And this is kind of the entire premise of the war. Why all of it started, Russia's been consistent all the way through. Whereas Ukraine's document is effectively, we want a ceasefire. That's effectively their document. Give me your take on this, these negotiations in general.
Well, I mean, there you have it. It's pretty straightforward. Again, it's no surprise for whoever's been following the conflict since day one. But you notice that the last point is not the least one, which calls for election. So basically, you are telling whoever it is you are sitting across from in Istanbul that we want you gone.
Right.
You know,
Right.
but it's interesting that it's not. The idea is that we want you gone because we don't, respect the popular will of the Ukrainian people. We want you gone because basically, in as far as one, when you run for election, you run on a peace platform.
Right.
So obviously, you're not legitimate anymore. And two, more specifically, more technically speaking, as far as the legalese of it is concerned, you're not legitimate to even sign any piece of paper.
Right.
So the legal continuity, to the extent we can find a silver lining here, would be for you to abide by our terms, leading to then that 30-day ceasefire that you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
So that we could have those elections, and there would be, like I say, that would bind in a way the spirit of the agreement. The intermediate agreement would bind whoever comes out of the ballot box next time around.
Yeah.
So yeah, and obviously that's as far as Kiev is concerned, it's a non-starter.
It is unacceptable.
So yes, so this whole thing, but and I'm not even gonna get into the Ukrainian version on their terms. I mean, it's ridiculous.
Basically the
It's
opposite
just,
of the Russian terms.
yeah, but I
We
mean,
want more
like,
military, we want to be going to NATO, yeah, all this other stuff.
yeah. Well, I'm actually, it's just the Russians. I mean, they can't afford to be maximalist because of the reality on the ground. But for the Ukrainians to somewhat, match them. It makes no sense. I mean, yeah, I'll pay you, I'll match you, and I want to see I want to see your cards. I mean, no, you're not gonna see my cards.
Yeah.
So it's ridiculous. But it's part of the political process.
Well, that's
I
what I was
guess
gonna say.
the
No, no,
yes. Well, I mean, the idea is to try to basically uh, go along with this idea put forward by Trump's team, at least those that are somewhat honest in trying to bring the whole thing to a close by saying, we're not going to, get in the way of that. But to the extent you might not have realized just yet who you're dealing with, we'll go along so that you can see at some point that this is not going anywhere. And we're gonna have to do what we have to do.
you really think,
Uh,
and oh God, and this gets, I guess this goes into the thing. You really believe that there's somebody in the Trump administration that's being honest?
well, yeah, I mean, I think there are people who want to do business with Russia. So I would
Okay.
say the pragmatic wing of it, which is not to say, as a lot of policy analysts have been saying, that the idea is not to pivot to Asia for a few years until situation allows for resuming what has been going on in Eastern Europe for quite some time now,
Right.
at the tune of billions and billions of dollars. But for the time being, if we take into account this notion of strategic adjustment, strategic transition, yeah, that there's obviously those who long to stay there and keep Russia as the main focus, and those, like Ed said, like I wouldn't say Witkoff, because Witkoff is not a policy guy, but probably JD Vance and Ed said would be on the lead on that. It's to pivot
Mhm.
to, and actually they were, as you saw, they were, at least Ed said was very vocal at the last Shangri-La defense meeting. I mean, so he's announcing, basically what's next.
We ever
And
ready for
so I
war with
guess
China?
yeah, exactly, pretty much. I mean, so at least the containment of China, if that's even possible. I mean, still recall Putin's face when somebody tried to allude to this notion. But for all intended purpose, this is where we are right now. And yeah, so obviously there are people that are not very satisfied to begin with any kind of talks, real or imagined, and that's the security services agencies, right?
Yeah.
And so to the extent there might have been, and there were, most likely operations, contingent operation going on, being prepared for months, if not years, they decided that this was the time to activate it so as to kill this notion of peace negotiation in the egg. That's my understanding of it. Hence the whole operation with the drones
The
concealed in
drones, the trains.
lumber trucks. Yes,
No.
yes.
Um,
Um, why now? Well, we know why now.
so you think
Um,
this was done purely to try to spoil any negotiations?
yeah, it's the old playbook of trying to goad Russia into retaliating in such a dramatic fashion that it will be then milked for all it's worth by the media complex, and say, see, we can't leave this region. This is not possible. And as we told you all along, Russia has to be neutralized. Russia has to be stopped. Putin is, out of control. If we don't stop him in Ukraine, he'll gobble up all of Europe. all this nonsense. So they needed that, and they tried, and that's why we haven't heard anything. I mean, we heard this kind of little, allusion, innuendos by Medvedev, but even he, who tends to be so vocal, whenever he gets the chance, using extremely vivid expressions. Even on that one, uh, he was somewhat pretty demure. I mean, he alluded to, yeah, things, we'll get even on our own watch, when we choose it, at the time and place of our choosing. It sounded like an Iranian true promise.
Yeah.
You
I
know,
mean,
we'll get you, but at some point, we'll get you when,
he was more brutal
don't
than that.
worry.
He was just saying something like the people who are going to be dead are going to be eviscerated or something like that.
Yeah, but I
What
mean,
the hell?
but he wasn't, usually how he kind of, he unmistakably, refers to the Europeans, without
Arno, I so
calling them by
disagree with you
name.
on this. I
Yeah,
agree with you that they were trying to ruin the peace negotiations. Fair enough, agreed. If Russia is behaving, if they're moderating themselves to any degree, under the idea that they're going to get a positive headline out of the West, that is a fool's errand. You're not going to get a positive headline out of the West. Vladimir Putin could birth a baby on an airplane, like literally just carry the baby out on an airplane. And they would still find a way to attack him. Look at how he's holding that baby. Like, meaning there's nothing he
he
can
was trying to
do.
get the air through the lungs, but in fact, he
Yeah,
was trying to,
exactly. It's like, oh,
yeah,
he's
slam it
he's
against the
holding that
wall.
baby in the wrong way. He's Russians. My point is, maybe I'm more of a hard ass on this, and I don't know why I'm the one that's a hard ass on this.
Yeah, but to be sure, here it's the same. We have a lot of vocal people trying to say, what's going on. I mean, let's roll up our sleeves and let's get on with it.
Yes,
Let's unleash the Kraken. But
I can
obviously,
only
there's
hope.
right now the mood is that of an unsettling silence coming of the Kremlin. I mean, there's been no, except from Medvedev again, and to the extent he's somewhat the bad cop in that good cop bad cop configuration. I found him on this one to be, to the extent we're dealing with, I mean, an extremely provocative attack
Right.
involving not only the train derailments operation, which less than an hour ago, it's official now, have been declared as pertaining to terrorist acts. Okay,
It
so
was. They
so
waited till the train got there to blow it, meaning they killed those
yeah,
people on
exactly.
purpose.
Yeah, yes, including the crew. The crew are all dead. It happened 4 times, by the way. By and large, a couple of them only were reported, but it happened 4 times. Twice in Bryansk, once in Kursk, and once in Zaporozhye region near Melitopol, I think. So there's this, and then there is the strategic bomber
Right.
incidents, which have been pumped to make it sound like they took out what 34% of the entire fleet, i.e., 40 of them.
I think
No,
they took like
not
four
even
to eight.
close.
Yeah.
Yeah, and a lot less than 34% of the
Yeah.
entire fleet, to be sure. So, but obviously, yeah. I mean, as far as Ukraine is concerned, and as far as those in the Western deep states who would be keen to milk to keep on, the money laundering operation going, Lindsey Graham and Blumenthal, somehow being the point man on this. That it's par for the course. They always do it like this, and they know it's not going to change an iota as far as where the war is going. But to the extent they know they're going to be able to surf it for a couple of days, media-wise, they're trying to basically tell Trump, why should we even sit down when we can win this
So
militarily? Look,
I guess there are two things. One case, it's look how the Russians are. You can't negotiate with them because they've escalated the attacks. And two, it's hey, we can
if
still
if the
win.
Russian if the Russian gets goaded into overreacting or harshly or lashing out, like if they were to decapitate, the whole Ukrainian regime, well, I mean, that would be perfect. That would be like a godsend for the West.
But there are
So
things
that's
you can
why
do
it
less
takes,
than that. Like, I mean, look, I never said decapitate the head of the regime, but there are things that I give an example. because I don't. For one, I don't buy for a moment that the U.S. and Trump himself didn't know. I don't buy it. You saw no
Of
tweets
course they
from
knew.
Trump.
Yeah, of
Exactly.
course they knew.
So
Vicariously, if Trump did not know about the specifics, by virtue of being commander in chief, he knows that it's highly possible, highly likely that his security services are,
I would say
involved as he speaks.
100%.
Yes, of
Because
course.
where are the tweets? There are no tweets coming out of Trump. He's eerily quiet, if you've noticed. And at the point where Russia had sent all those missile strikes off, what did Trump do? He immediately, oh my God, Vladimir Putin is going crazy. He killed 13 people. Ukraine killed that many by
Wait. There's a difference
himself.
between knowing about specific operation and giving the green light. Let's say you have a presidential briefing in the morning and you get briefed on the situation, and within that briefing, as an operation is somewhat alluded to. You give the green light, you assume that, you take it. Politically, you assume it. It's on you.
Yes, on
But
Trump.
what I'm saying is, while he knows that his security agencies are not going to tell him everything that's going on, but they are attempt to engage in negotiation, right? In peace process. I mean, why bother with this in the first place if indeed, he's down with keeping the train going a certain way? You see what I'm saying?
I guess
Uh,
what I'm saying is the fact that Trump hasn't said anything about it, one way or the other, is
because
very
because
to
it's
me.
embarrassing, because it means the guy is not in charge. That's what it shows.
Or it shows he's complicit and he is involved in it. And I go further. The idea that Zelensky is going to pull something off like this without, because as you pointed out, if Trump didn't know anything about it, it's embarrassing. And if it's
It is.
embarrassing with Trump, then
And it's an
that really,
admission that, the president of the United States has no power whatsoever to stop
but it, but it also risks
anything.
alienating the president, who has already threatened to walk if he doesn't believe he can get a deal. Which means Zelensky, the UK, the CIA, all of these groups did this knowing full well that if Trump didn't know anything about it, that it can
Yeah.
alienate Trump, who could say, I'm done. But they did it anyway, which gives me this
I
notion
know,
that
but look at
they
it this way.
knew,
If he walks, if this is actually allowed to happen while he's still nominally involved in what's going on, just
yes.
imagine a second what would happen if he decides to walk. It's like, the cat's away and the mice dances all night. I mean,
But
it's
see,
party time.
I think he is directly involved in this. Like, and part of the other reason I think he's directly involved, A, I haven't seen any tweets out of Trump. B, they did this with impunity. C, Donald Trump wants Russia to accept his stupid peace plan. And because he wants Russia to accept his stupid peace plan, this is his way of effectively escalating behind the scenes with this fig leaf of, oh, I didn't know anything about this. Whatever. This is, and by the way, this is exactly what he would do. If this happened, would Trump more likely than not say, yes, I knew about it, or would he lie about it? He'd lie. He'd lie. He would act as if he was still trying to be a mediator while simultaneously escalating behind the scenes, knowing full well that Russia believes he was already involved, meaning the message is being communicated that we are going to escalate if you don't accept my stupid peace deal. I don't buy this notion that Trump didn't know anything about it.
Well, I guess we can
That's
agree
just
to
like, maybe I'm
disagree.
more cynical on this. I just don't buy it. But give me a take. So you think that, and look, I could be wrong, right? So is the,
I think
what is,
I think it's being engineered in such a way to send a message that Trump is not in charge. That's the whole idea, that that the deep state would basically send a message to the Russian that no matter what you think you can get going as far as striking a deal with this guy, this guy is the emperor has no clothes, essentially.
do you think that's what Moscow thinks? Or do you think Moscow thinks,
Yeah,
no, Trump was
it's
involved?
not what Moscow thinks. This is what Moscow has said all the time, including the president of Russia himself several times. He said, "President come and president go. Policies remain." This is what Brian Berletich has been repeating several times as well.
So what is the
So
point?
it's out of. I think it's well. The point is that
No, no, what I mean is, so what is the point of, I get the point of
Uh,
trying to go through
for Russia
negotiations.
to go along with the what
Yeah,
appears to be a kabuki theater, as some have been fond of saying,
yeah,
or this kind of belly dancing. Uh, I guess out of decorum, whatever you want to call it.
yeah,
This notion that if you can exchange a few thousands of guys, in the context of this negotiation, quote
you do
unquote,
so.
then you take what you can,
Yeah.
because on as far as they're concerned, that the idea is to try to get their guys back.
Russia over the night opened up. I'm very curious on what is the sentiment in Moscow, by the way, but I want to show this first. These are all the attacks that Russia opened up last night, effectively hitting command, industry, factories, etc. And this
Hmm.
includes strikes in the Sumy region where they apparently hit the people who they think were responsible for the train bombing,
That's right. Yes.
including killing one of the British
British.
mercenaries who's a handler, right?
Yeah.
So they have started to attack. In fact, apparently there was some kind of explosion in Nikolaya, what DD Geopolitics is reporting was a Kim Jong missile that was effectively launched. So they are clearly responding. Meaning, so it's not like they're just taking this and just moving it on. They're clearly responding in a way to get across. This is unacceptable. I guess my question is, what is the sentiment in Moscow? What is the public thinking at this point? Because you're right, Russia's been eerily quiet. I saw Putin give his first speech. He said nothing about it. He didn't bring this up. He was
Hmm.
talking to some delegation saying, hey, we have this history together, et cetera. He spent 4 minutes. It was like, I'm out. Didn't bring it up at least.
Well,
Medvedev is the only one that I've heard say anything about it. That's weird. That's very strange. It's freaky and even. What is being said in Moscow on this?
you mean on the street?
On the street, on TV,
Hmm. On
government,
the street and on
everybody?
TV. Well, I mean, I guess the TV personalities are out there trying to channel what is obviously a
Anger.
growing frustration, if not outright anger, as to what happened. To be sure, I mean, look at the train derailment. We're talking about civilians,
Right.
people who have nothing to do with all this. So you have to channel this anger, but you cannot allow it to somehow dictate as a decision maker, the way you're going to handle it. So it's a complicated situation. So there's a two-pronged approach, an approach predicated on keeping your nerves as far as replying to the situation, addressing it,
Yeah.
and then a prong that's aimed on for domestic purposes, which obviously has to somewhat provide for a place where people can exalt, vent out their frustration. So I guess that's the job of shows like that of Solovyev's, for instance. Solovyev's very vocal to begin with, so I'm sure through shows like this, people can call in and vent out, and it's not
Mm.
going to be obviously making any difference, but this is what those people are. This is what their job is. Especially in situations like this one, to try to control, to channel public anger
Outrage.
and outrage. Yes.
I have to be honest with you. This annoyed the hell out of me because part of it, my feeling is, and maybe I'm wrong on this, I felt like there's a level of complacency. Um, that there's a lot of triumphalism of, we've won this war, we've won this war. And while nothing changes tangibly on the battlefield, agreed. And while Russia's strategy is working, meaning they got this propaganda win, but the reality of it is Russia's still moving on the ground, especially in Sumy region, especially in the liberating villages. They are killing the Ukrainian military to the tune of like 3 or 4 thousand over the course of the last week alone. So you have real tangible gains versus this kind of, it's a hit, It's embarrassing, but in context of what Russia's been doing on the ground, it doesn't ultimately matter. I guess my thing is there should be consequences for this. And the longer this war goes on, or the longer this gets dragged out, the more opportunity NATO has to effectively attack Russia from the shadows as if they have nothing to do with it, and pretending that Donald Trump is somehow a mediator when he's a direct belligerent in the conflict seems insane to me. But that seems to be the way that media is trying to cast him, which I don't buy that premise. Donald Trump is a belligerent in all of this. Give me your
He
thoughts
is. I
on that.
mean, he represents the prime mover of this whole
Yes,
conflict. I agree with that. It doesn't mean that he doesn't realize that as far as the uniparty, the policy paper approach is concerned, this is not what I've been instructed to do. I've been instructed to wind it down here, come back to it later. My successor, or successors will pick it up where I left off. But for the time being, we have to. And there's if we can make money out of it, I mean, he and all his entourage and the Witkoffs, and they've made out. They've made out like bandits on those coins operation. So if they can make money, with some of the Russian, deep-seated interest, for the next few years, they want to privilege that. That's
so
to
what?
me, that's pretty much the way that they look at it.
So are they? So is
Uh,
Russia just hoping Trump walks? Because the fact that he hasn't said anything, the fact that he only sees what Russia does and never sees what Ukraine does, the fact that he's still giving intelligence to stuff like this.
well, it depends what you mean by walk. I mean, if he walks, then that means there's not going to be any renewed under
Right.
his watch. Yeah, then he can walk. Yeah, and will and Russia will finish it.
But if he
But if he
doesn't walk,
basically if
right,
he doesn't walk in that sense, then we have a problem.
I think you guys have a problem. And look, I'm saying that because it's one thing if
I
Donald
mean,
Trump came out.
I'm not saying we as the Russians, say we, the whole world, we have a
Right,
problem.
right, right. Yeah,
Because from
yeah.
that point on, it can only be escalating to the extent there's still room for escalation. And with what happened the last couple of days, actually, it might be in Russia's interest in the sense that for the last since the beginning of the operation, a lot of people have been, some people, and not the least influential, have been somewhat voicing out their opinion that we should call it what it is, which is a war, and not this kind of going around
It is
operation
war.
terms. Yeah,
It is
but for a
war.
lot of people, they don't want to call it that here. They don't want to mobilize people's mind in such a way that people are willing to uh, roll up their sleeves mentally, spiritually, and if need be more than that, to defend the country. That's what it is. It's become this kind of background noise, for a lot of people. Once in a while, there's going to be featured stories about drones over urban centers, but by and large, this kind of no man's land is in this kind of undefined state of affairs. I personally think has not been helping Russia. I think you got to call things out for what they are, so at least people are on the same page. And right now, I
Right.
don't feel like people are on the same page, which is why when you have incidents, quote unquote, like what happened the last couple of days, there's a big disconnect in people's mind because, as you said, a lot of people thought that this was under control in the remote area. That reports coming in are positive, and they've been so, and the economy is booming, and so on and so forth. And Russia is not isolated, quite far from it. We're enrolling and registering more and more support
Mhm.
from the global south, and et cetera, what have you. And then suddenly you get hit deep down in what's called the far rear. It's called the far rear, 4,000 kilometers east of where the front line is.
Right.
And the operation is supposed, it's almost like the equivalent of 9/11 with cutting cutters and cardboards and whatever, with some kind of do-it-yourself at home assembled drone, put into, and it was very ingenious. We have to be honest
Oh,
about it.
very much so. Yeah.
you know and the security services here were caught flat-footed completely. So that's really egg on the face of the whole state, if you ask me. I mean, that's my opinion.
Yeah.
If heads are not rolling after that, but we won't hear about it for sure. Those things
You
are
say
done
we won't
quietly.
hear about it if they do. Oh, like the
No,
people.
of course not. Yeah, yes. So yeah,
I think
uh,
there are a lot of us who want a stronger response. That's all. And maybe and I don't mean belligerence. I don't mean killing people for the sake. I don't mean any of that stuff. I'm talking about, like, I give you an example. All of these targets that I just showed, that were there, Russia knew about these targets already. Why did these things continue to exist if they already knew about all of these different targets? Meaning they hit all of these things last night, which means they had to be aware of all of this stuff. And yet, for whatever particular reason, they weren't being proactive in defining a target, destroying a target. They waited. I'm saying, why are they waiting? And what are they waiting for?
that's a good question. I mean, a lot of people have been alluding to what you're saying, including the existence of the 17 bridges connecting, one side of the Dnieper River to
Right.
the other, and asking, to the extent civilians may be taking those, using those bridges, there might have been a reticence, as far as reconstruction costs,
Right.
as far
That's
as
what I'm
the
saying.
winning
This is the
hearts of
frustrating
mine.
part.
That probably are a lot of elements bearing on those lines. The financial cost of rebuilding afterward, and the trying to not aggravate the population at the end of the conflict, when the conflict is called one way or another. But in the end, I mean, it's war. You're waging war, and it's you're right. It allows the logistics and the predicates for operations like the one we've seen yesterday.
You don't
But
think that the Ukrainian population is already agitated?
well, it depends on what area. I'm not saying they're not, all like saluting when a Russian reference passes by in front of them. But
Yeah.
by and large, in the eastern part of the country, people
Oh, I
are
see.
pro-Russians.
I see.
So you want to make sure you don't just come in and just
That's fair.
blanket bomb everything. You know?
I'm
Hey,
sounding
oh,
like
hey,
a
I'm on your
warmonger.
side here.
Yeah, I'm sounding like a
Otherwise, I mean,
warmonger. I'm sorry. Like I sound like a hard
because if
ass.
the
I
if,
just
if
saw
the
that and I'm like,
idea
why are they playing around?
No,
Like,
but that's why it's such a complicated conflict, because it's a brotherly state, it's a brotherly nation. It's the same people, and so you don't have this dehumanization. I mean, war is hell, to be sure,
yeah.
but they're trying to somehow. It's somebody here said it's an exorcism. This is what we're dealing with. So you don't want to kill the host. They're possessed. They're not. They don't have their mind. Rightly put these days. It doesn't mean we should like whack him. As a final solution.
But they hit those targets anyway.
But at the same time, if they are, boxed in, they'll show themselves to be extremely efficient. There's also the issue of the fifth column inside Russia. I mean, there's 5 million Ukrainians living in Russia,
Right.
including among those Ukrainians who got by now Russian citizenship, people who might have been living in the Donbass area, but who were supportive of the 2014 coup
Right.
in Kiev. And that's actually a major problem here, because
Yeah.
those drones, they were not assembled and then shipped, by and large. No, they were, I mean, from what I understand, in one of the air base that was attacked, the drone manufacturing facility was like located a few stone throws away from the base. So yeah, yeah. So they
Wow.
assembled it almost within like striking range of it's crazy. So that to me that's the major problem we have, a security problem.
Wow.
Because let's if we just imagine that of 5 million Ukrainians living in Russia, if we just consider like 1% of 5 million, that's a lot of people.
It is a lot of people. Wow. But that can't be a rationale to not be aggressive and prosecute the war because those people are there either way. Meaning those people are going to feel some kind of way either way. They're already there. There's nothing you can do about the fact that they're there. And you prosecuting the war, it's not going to change what those people do. They're going to do what they do anyway. I mean, for God's sake, they just assembled a bunch of drones and tried to take down your entire plane fleet.
No, I
That was,
understand, but I think
yeah.
what we should really somewhat extract out of our conversation is that it's not that much the issue of hitting all those database target that you meant that you showed on the
Oh,
screen.
it's internal.
It's internal. They're gonna have to clean their act here at many levels because there's been a lot of somewhat, you know, whatever you want to call it, complacency, sloppiness. Russia is a complicated place to run, right? So
Mhm.
it might seem really clean, sparkling clean on the very top tier, on the veneer of it. But Russia has had a long history of, as far as once you start going down, down, down in the power structure, yeah, it's a constant battle. It's a constant battle.
Wow.
How to have, people who are really dependable that you can rely on, that are going to do the extra thing to make sure that doesn't happen. So it's a whole mindset, and we're 25 years into Putin's presidency,
Mhm.
and we're still dealing with this, with the consequences that we see. So it's not that much a clear cut, stark, black and white. Yeah, we know we did it, and
It's
as you
about the
said,
yeah.
they identified that those British in Sumi, they were probably the one who received the intel from CIA and carried out then, somewhat, the operation from a forward
Right.
command and control center. But then you have all those internal. They were only able to get away with this by exploiting fault lines and shortcomings within Russia, and this is why somehow there are such a silence going on right now.
Arno, thank you for this. Thank you for
Mhm.
listening to me, bitch.
No, no, but
But anyway, okay.
no, this is no problem. But
I
this
do.
is this is why we have this. It's called dialectics. You
Yeah,
come from one
yeah,
way, I come from another, and then otherwise, and there's no point, and nobody's learning nothing.
yeah, no, yeah.
Yeah,
I was. I've been somewhat of a hard ass.
that's right.
Over the last few days on this. And Mark was like talking me down. Mark was like, "Yeah, man, you don't want to react too bad." And then I think Brian was like, "Yeah, you don't want to react too bad." And I'm like, "Okay, am I the only hard ass that I'm talking to about this?" I'm like,
But you
"It's
know how
like,
they
well,
call this in this? I heard that this doctrine in military general staff circles in all countries, or at least a few of them. They have this doctrine called of the tense man,
uh,
because there's this sense of mimetic sociology, in military headquarters. So everybody, basically goes along with what's being said for whatever reason. So they have this doctrine of the tense man. And the idea is that if nine of them all basically agree that it's white, it is the tense man's job to come up with,
red." Yeah,
yes, no matter how outlandish it might sound, but it has to be, somebody has to basically say to the others, you're wrong.
yeah. I guess I'll be the
Because
10th man on this because everybody I talk to is
ultimately,
very calm.
ultimately, it might actually be what's that guy is saying. that saves the entire project, whatever project
Yeah.
you're talking about. Then it depends on country to country, but saving the day. Let's call it saving the day. The tenth man's doctrine.
It's
Look it up.
un-American. And from our point of view, that shit would be unacceptable. Like, can you imagine how America would respond if Russia or China got somebody or worked with somebody to have drones to blow up strategic nuclear assets in various
In New
parts of the We
Mexico?
would lose
Yeah,
our minds.
yeah. You use Mexico as a proxy, and at some point you get deep into what's it called, White Range or whatever. New Mexico, they
Yeah,
have strategic. Yeah, well, that's the same thing.
we'd
Yeah,
lose our
I
minds.
can imagine. Yeah. Oh my God. I mean,
Mexico would not exist the next day.
everything will be vaporized. Yeah, within
Yes.
days. Yes, I agree.
So that's where my take comes from. I'm
Yes,
ultimately
yes,
from here, right?
yes, yes.
Arnaud, thank you for this. I really appreciate it, especially at short notice. Arnaud Develay, and great breakdown and great explanation of what was going on, the thinking that's taking place internally. And cooler heads are probably right. So I don't think you're wrong. And by the way, adding
Yeah.
more context to internal is something new that I don't think anybody else has brought up before, that I think you're also right about. Because a lot of this stuff happened internally to the
Well,
country.
because it's somewhat of a dicey subject. So
I see.
you have to. It doesn't mean you should not approach it. You should not deal with it, but you have to somehow. The temptation is to relay propaganda from the FAFO crowd, right? NAFO crowd, not the
Yeah,
FAFO crowd, the NAFO
yeah.
crowd. Yes. So so you have to somehow be more measured. But yes, it is an issue, and it should be discussed. This is what those
Fascinating.
podcasts are all about.
Very fascinating. Arnaud Develay, he is author, political analyst, and international lawyer specializing in international criminal law. By the way, do you have another book out, or Foreign Entanglements, Biden,
No, not
Ukraine, and
yet.
Fracturing of... Okay.
This is the one
So,
for now. Yes.
okay, so his latest
And with
book,
the auto pen scandal, from what I understand, is being the talk of the cable show scene in the U.S.
uh-huh.
And that's the time. This is the time to buy the book. Buy the book.
Well, the name of it, Foreign Entanglements, Biden, Ukraine, and the Fracturing American Political Consensus, Autopen indeed. Thank you, man, for this. You have a good night, okay? Be safe.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Alrighty. All right, great conversation with Arnaud. Yeah, I feel like I guess I'm the 10th man in this one. Everybody else has been far more measured than my